Foreign Schools FAQ, FAFSA Simplification and Electronic Application, featuring Effie Barnett, Training Officer, Training and Information Services Group, and Michelle Johnson, Training Officer, Training and Information Services Group.
Hello, and welcome to this presentation on frequently asked questions for foreign schools. Today, we will focus on select questions related to the FAFSA Simplification Act and the electronic application, which you probably know as the EAP. We have received these questions from foreign school representatives during the past year. We provide links to resources throughout the presentation and offer additional ones that you may find helpful. All right, it's time. Here we go. We begin with information on 10 questions related to FAFSA simplification. You may know some answers already, but it is always helpful to reinforce your understanding. Our first question is, what is the FAFSA submission summary? The FAFSA submission summary replaced the Student Aid Report, or SAR, whereas the FAFSA processing system creates the FAFSA submission summary and delivers it to students.
Our next question is, how is the Student Aid Index different from the expected family contribution? Well, the Student Aid Index replaced the expected family contribution beginning in the 24-25 award year. Both formulas are a measure of students and families' abilities to pay for college. The SAI and the EFC are similar, but they are different. The FAFSA Simplification Act changed several features in the SAI formula calculation, and these include removing the number of family members in college, reducing the number of income items and allowances against income, changing the items included in the contribution from assets, and allowing the SAI to be a negative number, but it can go no lower than negative 1,500. Now, you don't have to worry. You're not required to complete SAI hand calculations to package students with Title IV aid. The FAFSA processing system calculates the SAI when a student submits a complete FAFSA form. However, knowing what data gets entered into the FAFSA formula and how the FAFSA processing system calculates the data to determine the SAI helps you to better counsel your students and families, especially about special circumstances that may warrant a professional judgment. Now, if you want to learn more, we do offer SAI training on the FSA Training Center, and it's under FAFSA Simplification.
Here's another question we have heard from schools. You might be wondering if you treat the SAI the same way you treated the EFC when calculating a student's direct loan eligibility. So, the need equation to determine subsidized direct loan eligibility stays the same, but the names have changed. The formula is cost of attendance minus SAI minus other financial assistance, or OFA. OFA replaced estimated financial assistance, or EFA, in the law, but they are the same.
Our next question is a good one. What is the impact of a negative SAI on cost of attendance when determining a student's loan eligibility? Well, you cannot use a negative SAI to determine a student's direct loan eligibility. You must change a negative SAI to 0 before packaging the student. And I'll explain why we have to do that. Because subtracting a negative number is the same as adding a positive number. So if we subtracted a negative SAI from the cost of attendance, it would be just like adding the SAI back to the cost. Let's use an example. Let's say we have a $50,000 cost of attendance and then we subtract a negative 1,500 student aid index, SAI. And when we do the math, that would equal 51,500. So it looks like the student has 1,500 more in eligibility, but you cannot increase the amount of aid that a student can receive, whether it's need-based or non-need-based, just because the student has a negative SAI. And that's why we have to change the negative SAI to 0.
Thanks, Effie. Next question. Are the FAFSA processing system, or the FPS, and the FAFSA partner portal the same system? No, they're not the same. They are two completely different systems. The FPS is the processing system for FAFSA data. The FPS calculates the student's SAI and completes the required data matches in order to create the FAFSA submission summary, formerly the student aid report, and the ICER. The FAFSA partner portal replaced FAA access to CPS Online. FPP is a new website for financial aid administrators for the 2024-25 award year. FAAs can correct FAFSA information on the FPP.
Our next question asks, can we use the FAFSA partner portal instead of the ICER to determine a student's loan eligibility? Well, the answer is complicated. There is enough FAFSA information on the FAFSA partner portal to determine a student's loan eligibility, or we could also call it like their aid package. And you can capture screenshots of that FAFSA data. But as you know, at this time, you cannot download, save, or print an ICER from the FAFSA partner portal. However, there's a regulation, the section is 34 CFR 668.24, and the title of the section is Record Retention and Examinations. And this regulation requires schools to maintain either the FAFSA submission summary, which is what the SAR used to be, or the ICER that was used to determine a student's Title IV eligibility. And in that same regulation, there's another subsection that says the school must maintain the FAFSA submission summary. Actually, the regulation still says SAR, but we mean the FAFSA submission summary, or ICER in the format in which it was received by the school, except that the FAFSA submission summary can be maintained in an imaged media format, which means you can go ahead and scan it. Now, this means that you should be downloading ICERs or collecting FAFSA submission summaries when you package your students for Title IV aid, and not relying on screenshots of FAFSA data that you could capture from the FAFSA partner portal. And your auditor will check if you maintained either the FAFSA submission summary or ICER during your annual compliance audit. Now, there's one more reason, a good reason why you should download ICERs, because the ICERs contain the students' and contributors' federal tax information, the FTI, that gets transferred from the Internal Revenue Services into the FAFSA data. Neither the FAFSA submission summary nor the FAFSA partner portal displays the FTI. And you may need the FTI. You may be reviewing and need to process a rejected ICER. You may need to exercise your professional judgment, or you may need to resolve conflicting information. That's why we really strongly encourage you to use ICERs to determine loan eligibility. You could download ICERs using EdExpress or another software.
Another question about EdExpress is it the only way to access an ICER without using a third-party servicer system? Well, in the future, the FAFSA partnered portal will allow financial aid administrators to request a single ICER or a specified group of ICERs from the FAFSA processing system. Currently, Federal Student Aid has designated EdExpress as a free tool schools can use to import analyze, display, and print ICER data that includes federal tax information or FTI. If your school already uses another software system to import, display, and print ICER data, whether or not you engage a third-party servicer, then you most likely do not need to use EdExpress.
Our next question asks, do we need to do anything special to receive 24-25 ICERs through EdExpress or any other system? And the answer is yes. You must complete an updated SAIG enrollment agreement, enroll for a new FTI SAIG mailbox, and download the latest SAIG software. FTI SAIG is a separate system used to transmit ICERs beginning in 24-25. And the FTI mailbox has been established specifically with updated security protocols to handle the transmission of ICER data containing federal tax information from the IRS, the Internal Revenue Service. Now, you will sign the updated agreement and enroll for a new FTI SAIG mailbox on Federal Student Aid's SAIG enrollment site. Every partner enrolled to receive ICERs must also install upgraded SAIG software to continue receiving ICER data or to begin receiving ICER data. Now, Electronic Announcement General-2414 provides instructions on how to download the software. As a side note, you will still use the original SAIG system because it remains the designated platform for handling all other types of non-FTI batch data. And we've included the link to the Knowledge Center's software and other tools page on this slide, where you could always find the latest software versions and their technical references.
Next question. How do we make ICER corrections for the 2024-25 award year? And the answer is schools can make corrections to individual ICERs through the FAFSA Partner Portal. You can find out more about ICER corrections in the FAFSA Specifications Guide, Volume 3, using the link on this slide.
Well, Michelle, this is a good question too. The FAFSA Submission Summary, as we know, formerly the SAR, now includes a section on estimated financial aid, which notifies a student of their potential Pell Grant eligibility. But we know that students attending foreign schools are not Pell Grant eligible, and this is causing confusion. So the question is, will the department modify the system to only include loan eligibility for students attending foreign schools? Let's take a look. Our answers on the next slide. We are not aware of a department plan to change current functionality. A student can choose multiple colleges on the FAFSA, and that can include a combination of domestic and foreign institutions. So a student may be eligible for a Pell Grant and other Title IV aid, like federal work study at the domestic school, and that aid is not available at a foreign school. Now, keep in mind, there's a disclaimer on the FAFSA submission summary explaining the amount of Title IV aid displayed, and that it says that it's only an estimate and that the school will determine the amount. Now, we recommend that you clearly communicate to your U.S. students that they can only receive federal direct loans at your school.
Moving on. Join us as we embark upon a discussion of 26 questions concerning the e-app. First, there are so many new roles associated with FSA Partner Connect and the e-app. How can we make sure that the right users have the necessary access? Well, there are two separate sets of administrators for two different systems. The FSA Partner Connect primary and secondary administrators And the eligibility and oversight, or E&O administrators, are dedicated roles for FSA Partner Connect. The primary and secondary administrators manage access to FSA Partner Connect. Now, the E&O administrator and alternate E&O manage access to complete actions within FSA Partner Connect, and they can access and update the EAP. The E&O administrators are the ones who assign EAP case management roles for staff to view, edit, and submit the EAP. Now, a school may only have one primary administrator, one secondary administrator, one E&O administrator, and one alternate E&O administrator. Keep in mind that these roles are different than the destination point administrators who manage account access for other department systems. The same person can perform several roles. For example, one person can be the primary destination point administrator, the primary administrator for FSA Partner Connect, and the E&O administrator for the EAP. If the destination point administrators are not the financial aid administrator, then they should assign the primary administrator role for FSA Partner Connect to the FAD via the SAIG enrollment site. These roles should be assigned to individuals who have day-to-day responsibilities for managing department systems. And now, let's continue on to the next slide. There are resources here to help you further understand the new FSA Partner Connect and EAP roles. We have included a frequently asked questions site on the Knowledge Center about FSA Partner Connect access, a PDF document called FSA Partner Connect user roles for eligibility and oversight work that contains a helpful table describing each role and its responsibilities. And finally, another PDF document that's located on our FSA Training Center called Getting Started for Administrators, Frequently Asked Questions. It is about managing user access on FSA Partner Connect.
Thanks, Michelle. Those are great resources. All right, we have another question, and this is about updating information on the EAP. And the question asks, what's the process to update information when you're not completing a recertification? Well, let's go ahead and review that answer on the next slide. Schools must complete an update application to add or change information that affects their Title IV eligibility. For example, you may need to add a new program or a new location or even change an official. So to begin the update process, you would select Update/Report Information as your reason for submitting in step 1 of the EAP, where you select your purpose of the EAP. And then after the department processes the update, you will receive an email, but you will not receive a new PPA. Update applications do not generate a new PPA.
A related question is, I am completing the new EAP for the first time just to update a school official. Why is the system forcing me to review every section of the application? This is a great question that you might be encountering. And the answer is that the EAP in FSA Partner Connect includes a lot of new questions. When completing the new EAP for the first time, you must answer all questions in each section that were not previously required, or the system will prevent you from submitting the application. This is true even if you wanted to only change a single item, such as updating an official or reporting a new additional location. Adding all that new information all at once is time-consuming. But keep in mind that you typically have 10 calendar days to submit and update to your information. So please don't wait until day 9 to begin the process. And remember, there is something positive about doing the extra work now. When your recertification application comes due, you will begin the process with a complete EAP, and you'll only need to update information that has changed.
All right, here's a good question. If we submit an EAP, then realize we made a mistake, how do we access the EAP to correct the error? This happens all the time, and your Foreign School Participation Division is happy to help you. Please email them at the address on the slide to request that they open your EAP so you can make the correction. And it's not just about correcting errors. You can also request access to update information if something changes after you submitted your EAP. Like there's a new program that you need to add, or a new location has opened, or you're closing a new location, or you need to report a change in officials. You could do that. You just have to email your Foreign School Participation Division. But we do want to make you aware of what happens when you re-enter an EAP that's already in process. Whenever you make a new change, your authorized signature authority will receive a DocuSign email, and it'll be about the same opened application, and it'll happen every time you make a change, no matter how minor that change is. And you cannot use a delegation of authority to sign the EAP. You might be thinking, well, I'll just sign the EAP because it's a minor change, but you cannot do that. You can only use a delegation of authority if your authorized signature authority is unavailable due to an emergency. For a smoother process, we recommend that you make any corrections or additions to your previously submitted EAP all at one time, if possible.
Now we're moving on to some questions about ownership. The first one is, what do institutions that are public in their country select for their current Title IV participation designation status? In question 1 of Section C. Section C is entirely about a school's ownership, control, and structure. Virtually all Title IV eligible foreign institutions that are public in their country are designated as private nonprofit for Title IV purposes. And they must select private nonprofit as their Title IV participation designation status in question 1 of Section C. Now, here's an important tip. Few, if any, foreign schools have been approved as public institutions for Title IV purposes. Unless you are 100% sure that you are one of them, you must select private nonprofit as the answer to question 1. Otherwise, you will have to make a correction.
Michelle, this is a great follow-up question to what you just talked about. And it asks, how does an institution that is public in its country become designated as public for Title IV purposes? Schools that are public in their country have the option to submit a letter of public status or other acceptable documentation to the Easy Audit website. And that document must be signed by an official of that country or other government entity, confirming that the school is a public institution and it is backed by the full faith and credit of the country or other government entity. Now, we've included the link on the slide for the financial responsibility regulations that explain how foreign public schools are financially responsible. The regulation is 34 CFR 668.171G, paragraph 2.
Next question. What should a university do if it is a charity regulated for education and doesn't have an owner as such? And how do you describe the voting rights for that entity? Well, charities regulated for education may be public institutions, such as those in the UK that receive government grants for their students. An institution with this designation should verify if it is considered public in the country where it is located. All public schools that are designated as private nonprofit for Title IV purposes must now report ownership on the EAP. If you are a public school, you should enter the school's name as the entity owner. And here's an important tip. You'll enter 100% for both the percentage of ownership and of voting rights. If the system requires you to upload a voting agreement, then please upload a document that states that you are a public institution and you do not have a voting agreement.
Thanks, Michelle. We do have a few more questions on ownership. And the next question asks, we are a public school in our country, but private nonprofit for Title IV purposes. Which ownership type do we select in question 3A under entity owner? All public schools should select foreign entity as their ownership type in question 3A. Also know that you'll be asked to provide the date that your school was incorporated or organized. And we know many schools have charters that were established centuries ago, but the EAP system calendar under date incorporated / organize only goes back to the 1920s. If your school began operating prior to the earliest date in the EAP calendar, then please select the earliest date that's on the calendar, and then let us know the actual date that your school was incorporated or organized by entering the date in the additional information screen. You'll find it at the end of section C, right below the upload files pages.
To follow up on that answer, we now have a question and answer about ownership types. We are a private nonprofit school in our country. What do we choose for ownership type, and who is our owner? Let's review the answer on the next slide. The answer is private nonprofit schools also must enter owner information in the new EAP. Some private nonprofits are governed by foundations. If that's the case, then the school should report the foundation as the school's entity owner. If the school is not governed by a foundation, then the school should enter the school's name as the entity owner. On a related note, the system says that UEI is for entity owners is optional, but the Foreign School Participation Division highly recommends you enter it if the entity owner has one.
Our next question is on ownership documentation for public and private nonprofit schools. So we combined two questions because the answer is the same. The question is, what supporting documentation should we submit if we are a public or private nonprofit institution? You should upload a document such as a charter or something similar that contains your school's foreign entity information and its creation date. Now, when you're uploading the document, because you will upload this document in the upload files section in section C, make sure you select structure, ownership, and control, other document as the document type, because you do have to select the document type before you upload it. So it's structure, ownership, and control, other document. And that's what you'll use to upload your information.
Next is a commonly asked question. Must the registered agent work for the university, or can they work for a different entity? If we do not have a registered agent, can we leave that section blank? You cannot skip this question. Every entity owner has a registered agent, even if you do not call them a registered agent. This person receives the legal documents and can answer legal questions on behalf of the entity owner. The registered agent is for a specific owner. If your school has more than one entity owner, then you must enter a registered agent for each owner. If you are a public or private nonprofit institution that listed the school's name as the owner, then the registered agent is the person who receives legal documents and can answer legal questions on behalf of your school. That person may or may not work for the school.
Thanks, Michelle. Well, we continue on with entity owner officials. The question asks, are the entity owner officials in Section C the same as the school officials? The answer is it depends. The entity owner officials are individuals who work for the entity, such as a corporation or foundation that owns all or part of the school. Now, the entity owner officials that you have to report information are the president or chief operating officer, the chief executive officer, and the chief financial officer. So there are 3 entity owner officials that you have to report information on. Now, these individuals may or may not work for the school. It really depends. Because if you are a public or private nonprofit school the school's name as the entity owner, then the entity owner officials are the same people that you will identify as the school officials in Section D of the EAP, which is about school officials. One person can have more than one entity owner official role. For example, if your school has a president or chancellor, but it doesn't have a CEO or COO role, then you would report that person as the president/chief operating officer and as the CEO, because they're in charge. The president's in charge. But make sure that at least one person that you report as an entity owner official has the authority to sign a legal binding document, such as a program participation agreement. Now, if your school is not an entity owner, which is typically the case for proprietary schools, then you will report an individual in both sections only if they work for the corporation that owns all or part of the school, and if they also work at the school. So here's another example. If the president of a proprietary school is also an official of the corporation that owns all or part of the school, then you will report the person as an entity owner official and also as the school official in Section D.
This next question also applies to proprietary schools. What is the time frame for reporting owners who have left the school via the EAP? And again, we have another answer. It depends. If the action of the owners leaving the business does not result in a change in control, then you have 10 calendar days to report the occurrence using an update application. However, if the action results in a change in control, then you're going to have 10 business days to submit a change in ownership application. It's best to contact the Foreign School Participation Division for guidance immediately to determine which type of EAP you should submit.
Thanks, Michelle. Okay, we've moved on from owners and ownership information, and now we are in Section D, which is about school officials. And our question asks, well, it starts with, we must now report 6 different school officials in Section D. What if we don't have all these positions at the school? And that's a great question. We want to talk about this for a minute because all schools must now enter officials for 6 different roles on the EAP. These individuals are school employees who are designated by the school's board or other institutional authority as those responsible for management, planning, budgeting, policy development, or other administrative functions of the school. The 6 roles that you have to report information for under school officials are the CEO, the president or chancellor, the chief financial officer, the financial aid director, the chief information officer, and the chief operating officer. You must enter a person's information for each role. But here's the good news. You can enter the same person in multiple roles if your school doesn't have these 6 different positions. You only have to make sure that your school complies with the separation of functions requirement by confirming that no single person or office is responsible for authorizing Title IV payments and dispersing and delivering Title IV funds to the students. Now, you could learn more about the separation of functions requirements in the administrative capability regulations. The link's on the slide. It's 34 CFR 668.16 C2 and in Volume 2, Chapter 3 of the Federal Student Aid Handbook. We recommend, this is like a tip, we recommend that you complete the entity owner officials information in Section C before you enter the school officials in Section D, because that's going to help you correctly identify the individuals in each section.
Thanks, Effie. Next question. We're having an issue with collecting personal contact information, such as home address, personal cell phone, from the school officials due to privacy laws in our country. Now, how do you propose we proceed when we're not able to obtain these personal details? The department is collecting this information so we can reach school officials in the event of an emergency. Remember, you did previously report emergency contact information that included personal email and personal phone number for 2 officials on the former EAP in question 69. Now, you can't submit the EAP without completing this section for each reported school official.
Thanks, Michelle. We're still in Section D, but now we're going to be looking at questions about board members. And the first one is about public schools. The question asks, could you please clarify what schools that are public in their country but private nonprofit for Title IV purposes must enter for board members? I'd love to clarify. I want to mention that all public schools that have a board, whether you're private nonprofit for Title IV or public for Title IV, all public schools must answer yes to the question that asks if the school has a board, if you have a board. So if you have a board, you must answer yes to that question. Now, if you're a school that's public in your country and private nonprofit for Title IV purposes, you must enter all board members in this section. So if you have 15 board members, you must enter the information for all 15 of your board members. Now, we do have a related question, and this is also about board members and public schools, but it's a little different. This question asks, are we required to enter board members if we are public in our country and public for Title IV purposes? Would we do that? Well, the answer is yes. As we just said, if you have a board, you have to answer yes. But if you are public for Title IV purposes, you must only enter information for 2 board positions. The head of the board, typically called a chairperson, and the board's recording secretary. That's it. Now, we do have one more tip for everyone. about board members or about whether or not you have a board. So all schools, whether you're public, private, nonprofit, or proprietary, should answer no to the question if you do not have a board. The department does not require you to have a board, so if you don't have a board, just answer no.
Thanks, Effie. Returning to the question of personal information. Must we enter personal contact information for our board members? And the answer is no. You will not be asked to enter personal contact information, such as the home address, personal email, personal phone number, for your board members of your school. You are required to enter each board member's full name, including middle name, if they have one, the job title at the school, and their email address. The email address must be one they will check regularly. This can be an individual email address that was assigned by the school. For each board member, you must also answer 3 questions that are related to past performance under the financial responsibility regulations.
And this next question is about one of those questions related to past performance. It says, one question on the EAP asks if the board member ever held a position at another school. What is the definition of a position at another institution? Is that an administrative position or a teaching position? Well, the question asks if the board member has ever held a position or served as a board member at another school. And the answer is yes. If the board member ever held any position at another school, including any administrative or teaching position, or if they served as a board member at another school. So really, basically, any position held at another school, the answer is yes.
Now we're going to switch to a few new topics. Do we have to report online or blended programs, even though these are not Title IV eligible? Well, schools must only report educational programs for which they request Title IV aid eligibility. Remember that online or blended programs offered at foreign schools are not Title IV eligible, so you don't have to report them on the EAP. That said, foreign schools may use technology to supplement and support classroom instruction in the foreign country, where the students and instructor are both physically present.
Our next question is an interesting one. It says, we do not offer a medical program. Why are we getting an EAP error about uploading medical school annual reports? Well, let's take a look. Non-medical schools may receive a validation error when they try to submit the EAP. And the error says that they are missing medical annual reporting documentation. There is a workaround, and the workaround is to create a blank PDF document that has the file name is blank, just name it, no medical programs, and upload it for each required data set that you see here in the screenshot. So you would upload this blank PDF titled No Medical Programs 4 times. Now, we don't know if this error affects every school. So you can either wait to see if you get the error before completing this action of uploading these blank PDFs, or you could be proactive and upload the PDF before trying to submit the application. It's really, that's up to you.
Next question. Should we report Western Union / Convera as a third-party servicer? Let's look at the next slide for the answer. And that answer is yes and no. Here's what you should do if you use Convera. Report that you are using Convera by entering a comment On the additional information screen in Section J of the EAP, and list the services the company provides. And upload the contract between your school and Convera on the Upload Files screen in Section J. Now, right now, we don't want Convera reported as a third-party servicer. So if Convera is already listed as a third-party servicer on your EAP, go ahead and enter an end date for it. The department will offer you additional guidance on how to proceed after it reviews the information that you provided on your EAP.
Well, we are moving through the application questions quite well because we're already on Section N. This question asks, who should be entered as an additional contact in Section N of the new EAP? Well, this was a question in the old version of the EAP as well. It was question 70. The question asks if you would like to add a contact person who does not work at the school, but can represent you to the department in matters related to the application. For example, the additional contact can be a third-party servicer or a financial aid consultant who helped you complete the application. School employees should not be listed in Section N. If you see the name of someone who works at your school, they were pre-populated from the old EAP, and you should enter an end date to remove them from this section, Section N. So I don't want you to worry about doing that because end dating the person in Section N will not affect them if they're listed elsewhere on the EAP in another role. For example, let's say the person that's right now listed in Section N is the financial aid director. So if you end date them in Section N, it won't touch them. It will not end date them in Section D under officials where they're listed as the financial aid administrator. So you're fine to go ahead and end date anyone who works at your school in Section N.
So, are we still required to submit a paper signature page for the new EAP? No, you no longer must submit a wet signature page when submitting the EAP or countersigning a program participation agreement. The department now uses the DocuSign process to capture all signatures electronically. The school official who signs the EAP and PPA now is called the Authorized Signature Authority. Immediately after you submit the EAP, the Authorized Signature Authority will receive an email from FSA Partner Connect with instructions on signing the application using DocuSign. If the eligible action requires a new PPA, like a recertification, the Authorized Signature Authority will receive an email to sign it. Make certain that the Authorized Signature Authority's email is specific to that person and not for an organization or office, such as an email address like administration@xyzuniversity.edu, because that could be used by multiple people.
What happens if the Authorized Signature Authority doesn't receive the DocuSign email when we submit the EAP? Michelle just said they received the email immediately, the Authorized Signature Authority, but what happens? They didn't get it. Well, this is why it's so important to confirm that the Authorized Signature Authority's business email address is correct before submitting the application. And as Michelle just said, make sure it's an email address for that individual. Ask your Authorized Signature Authority to check their inbox and any other boxes, spam, junk, clutter, quarantine folders, check them all. If they still cannot find the email, then please contact the Foreign School Participation Division for guidance, and they will help you get this process started.
You may ask yourself, can any employee be given Authorized Signature Authority delegation for signing the EAP and the PPA? In Section Q, There's an option to enter a person who is acting on behalf of the authorized signature authority and the school if the authorized signature authority has experienced an emergency and is not available to sign the application or the PPA. Otherwise, the authorized signature authority must sign the application and PPA if applicable.
Michelle, can you believe it? We're at our last question. Do you have any other tips, is what we've been asked, for completing the new e-app? The answer is yes, we do. We have a few more tips to share with you on the next 2 slides. When updating or adding locations, please do not abbreviate any part of the location street address. Spell everything out. No abbreviations, including the full street name. And make sure that your school's federal school code contact is correct in Section F, which Section F is all about locations. You can update the contact's name. Let's say, oh, that person no longer works here, so you want to update the contact's name. Just type over the name of the individual that's currently listed on that screen. There's no end dating or anything when it comes to federal school code contacts. Just type over their name. And that's it for locations. Now, when adding or updating educational programs, you must report new degree programs on the e-app if your school is currently provisionally certified, or if you're a proprietary institution. And all schools, public, private, nonprofit, proprietary, all schools must report new non-degree programs. And Michelle mentioned this a little earlier. You must only report programs for which you are requesting Title IV eligibility. So if you have a program and you'll have no U.S. students who need Title IV aid, you don't have to report those programs. Finally, when you're submitting the application, make sure you complete all sections of the e-app and upload all required documents before clicking on the submit button. The system will produce a list of validation errors if your application is incomplete when you try to submit it. You must resolve all errors before your submission is successful. Please contact customer support if you're experiencing issues while completing the application. Their information is in the resources section coming up next.
You made it. We have now finished the main portion of our presentation, and we provide you with some information that you may find helpful coming up. Here are a few resources on FAFSA simplification and FAFSA form completion and processing. The Knowledge Center page includes links to Federal Register notices, Dear Colleague letters, and electronic announcements, and other resources related to FAFSA simplification. Here is the contact information for the FAFSA Processing System Help Desk for technical assistance concerning ICER processing and related systems. Please report student-specific FAFSA form issues by submitting a complaint in the Feedback Center on studentaid.gov. This helps escalate the concern. On this side, we've given you important resources related to the e-app. And next, this slide includes helpful resources about third-party servicers, including the email address of the third-party servicer oversight group if you have any questions concerning entities that provide Title IV services or functions to your school. There's so many other great resources, including the Knowledge Center, where you will find all resources about Title IV administration. Be sure to subscribe to our daily or weekly emails to stay up to date on the latest guidance. Take advantage of all that is offered there. including recordings, materials, and Q&A transcripts from our previous Wednesday webinar. If I tried to list everything that is there, we would never finish this webinar. And the FSA Training Center is our training platform. We just published the 2024-25 Foreign Schools Training in a new, engaging, and interactive format. Finally, the FSA Partner Connect Help Center. This is where you can submit your policy-related questions. Remember, choose policy guidance from the topic drop-down list so the question can go to the correct person. Finally, as we bring this presentation to a close, we want to provide you with the links to our many social media platforms. Feel free to share these with your students.
We hope that you found this presentation helpful. It is so important to us to keep the lines of communication open and keep the conversation going. We appreciate your time and attention and all that you do for your students. Thank you again. Thank you for joining us.